started out at a candy shop. I was selling candy and cookies. A bunch of teenage children was there spending money with me all the time. I've done fine. All right, here comes the city. They condemn the place and tow it down. We's up there taller than me now.
Downtown is building up and is pushing people out. And it's being done by design. And that's what, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about...
That's a bunch of malarkey. Nobody plans the use of another man's property in Houston. There's no zoning board. The planning commission merely determines where utilities and streets are located. Nobody has planned what to do with somebody else's property.
I want to understand what forces are at work, that's all. So I think that if we all know what forces are at work, we can at least prepare it in some way to make some decisions about our own lives.
Mic tap. Second mic tap.
In the last episode, our investigation was unable to turn up proof that the city and business were conspiring to drive the people of Fourth Ward out. However, business leaders did feel that economic growth in the downtown is an absolute necessity. As to the problems of Fourth Ward, they said that's the responsibility of government. So we took our film material and showed it to the people of the Fourth Ward. They were shocked to learn that the mayor they voted for had declared that Fourth Ward was a gone neighborhood, that it was the victim of natural economic forces and not worth investing in. The people insisted that the mayor come to Fourth Ward and tell them that, face to face. This story took place over a year ago. You're seeing it just about as it happened. That way you can make up your own mind. I have to go over it again in order to make up mine.
It's what has developed over the years with the natural forces at work.
Yeah,
I don't think
that
anyone ever said it.
I just can't accept
We're going to kill.
that he really believes in something called the natural forces of the market.
The following day, we would take the mayor to the Fourth Ward, and we thought we needed some expert advice. So we asked an economist at the University of Houston to take a look at the mayor's interview and give us a reading. Was there anything he could see in the mayor's remarks that might give some hope for saving the Fourth Ward?
I have great respect for the mayor's integrity and his honesty, and I think that he actually believes that that area is not likely to be redeveloped, but I just cannot believe that he actually thinks there's something called the natural forces of the market. He and I studied at the University of Texas at the same time, under the same economics professor, and we firmly were told and learned and believed, and Fred, as well as I, came out of there convinced that a belief in the natural forces of the market was just a lot of nonsense.
But if he doesn't believe it, then why does he say it?
Right. I think that the mayor, rather than being in the real world of economics, is in the real world of politics, and that is a phrase that is understandable. I believe that the mayor honestly thinks the land values are so astronomically high that it can't be redeveloped, and so he slips off into a cliche to get himself out of it. As a general principle, I think the mayor probably would agree that that phrase is a way of avoiding confronting problems. Because natural forces, what would lead us...
The Gregory was telling us that it was just talk, that there was no such thing as natural forces of the marketplace, and that the mayor didn't believe what he was saying. Maybe people had been throwing words at us because we were just too dumb to know what they meant.
Forces were not natural. They were the result of people making decisions. De Gregory's argument was that government made decisions where streets and public utilities should be, and this helped determine how the so-called natural forces would operate. If this was so, then the government could make other kinds of decisions which would protect the Fourth Ward.
This whole constellation of events will determine the degree to which forces can operate, natural and otherwise, and mostly otherwise, to develop or to let these areas deteriorate.
Otherwise means people deciding things.
People making decisions, and we tend to want to avoid the responsibility of making these decisions, or try and pretend that they're beyond our control, when in fact government makes critical decisions.
And so, people are being shuffled around. If it is a myth, then the forces that be, those forces being the mayor, the people on the city council, the people in city planning, the people in the downtown business establishment, all working in concert to force 7,000 people, out of the inner city and away from what they call their homes. one way or the other. It doesn't matter to me whether it's a myth or not. What people believe to be the inevitable seems to be happening, and the forces, the mayor and everybody else seems to be, working toward that end. So I
don't see an opening in this idea of a myth.
Yeah, well,
if we could realize
I see
it's
where
a myth, then we can start saying, but hey, then we can look. There's something we can look at to find a way of solving the problem.
Yeah, but I think it's going too far. I think that it's gone too far.
Conspiracy. If you speak of it as a conspiracy, then you are implying that a few ignoble people got together and plotted ill for this area, and you're not going to get a fair hearing.
But I'm not worried about whether it's a fair hearing or not. All you have to do is go over there and look at a bunch of people languishing. It's not whether I deserve a fair hearing as to whether those people over there deserve.
Okay, but if we can get them a fair hearing, now one of the things that the way these myths work is not that a few people at the top necessarily can destroy a community, but that all the forces of the private and the public sector begin to conspire to destroy that community. Conspire, I sense, not in the sense of a small group of people getting together, but in this unconscious conspiracy of adherence to a myth. If
like a conspiracy.
for example, at all levels.
It's not unconscious, though. People are running. It's not unconscious. People are running around saying things.
But
the mayor of the city of Houston.
Yeah, but they can believe it. But you said he doesn't believe it.
I say that the mayor undoubtedly believes the price of the land is high on it, but he doesn't believe in the natural forces. He just believes that the situation has gone beyond the point of being retrieved, and he believes that there are other areas of the city that have higher priority.
With the mayor presented with evidences that everything that he believes is a myth, what is it exactly, that you think that he would do or can do? Secondly, we've been talking about, that there is no such thing as natural forces. Then what are the forces? Are they people? What causes people to believe in even the myth that there are such things as natural forces?
Well, I think the myth of the natural forces, without getting into history of economic thought, is rather deep in American society and English society and in Western society. And according to the economics that Mayor Hoffheinz and I learned, it has arisen as a very convenient myth, a myth that rationalizes a market economy and justifies whatever kind of injustices and disparities arise under those circumstances.
He's shucking and jiving with us and the people. It's what I'm getting to. If you all, both studied under the same teachers, believe the same thing, that there were no such things as natural forces, and then he turns right around and tells us that, isn't he actually, trying to pull the wool over our eyes?
How are you today? We brought up in here along with us. How's everything going, Fred? Good now. How you been? Oh, excellent. Good seeing you.
We went down to City Hall to meet the mayor and take him to Fourth Ward, and we took DeGregory with us just to see if we could break down that story of the mayor's about natural forces.
Well, we just had a few things we had to clear up in reaction to the other interview we had, so we brought Tom along to help us out here. So why don't you just take it off?
Yeah, Fred. A couple things in your interview that I read was interesting to me, particularly since we both studied economics at UT. What did you mean by natural forces of the market? We kind of learned at UT that they didn't exist.
Well, I'm not exactly sure where I used the remark in the context of the previous interview.
In terms of what was dragging down Fourth Ward over the last, 20 years.
You mentioned progressive areas of the city that changed because of natural forces of the market, and you suggested the Fourth Ward was going to go the same way, and that it was irreversible.
What I meant was that property was developed with one use, which now, 50 years later, or 75 years later, that use is not that use does not conform to the value of the ground. That is to say, the price of the real estate has risen so highly.
These natural forces really seem to assume that government is going to act in some way. And if that's what they do assume, I would suggest that maybe government could act otherwise. And the natural forces wouldn't have to operate.
Well, government could act. There's no question about the ability of government to contradict natural forces. But it's highly unlikely, given the government structure of Houston, Texas, and given the smallness of the Fourth Ward problem compared to the larger metropolitan Houston area problems, that will happen.
But are they really natural forces if they can't take place without government having to do something positive? Provide the basic infrastructure, the basic framework of transportation so that area could develop. Because we now have a bottleneck in the city, as you know, as you've worked on. And to develop out that way further means that we'd have even greater transportation problems. And the private sector can't solve it. And so that area can't develop unless the public sector commits itself to a transportation problem. So that doesn't seem like
well, you know, the other side of that same coin is that government could act to reduce the value of the land, or, for that matter, to itself redevelop the land for whatever purpose the government deems appropriate. You know, there are two solutions to the problem, is what I'm saying. But on the other hand, I'm saying it's highly unlikely, given the government structure and the institutions of this community, that's going to happen. Although, frankly, this administration is interested in exploring the idea.
You mentioned in the other one that you don't have the tools. What do you need?
For one thing, under the state of Texas Constitution, every local community is permitted an urban renewal authority. That is an authority that has the right to go in and buy real estate for no other purpose than redevelopment, and then to resell that real estate at a loss, reducing the cost of the real estate, thereby encouraging the development of the real estate. Virtually every large city in the state of Texas has urban renewal authorities in place. We do not in Houston. We have never had one. Houston does not have traditionally a land use management approach to the development of the city. We are a non-zoned city, and it is very unlikely that you could get urban renewal authority in this community until you have a comprehensive zoning ordinance. It's very unlikely that you're going to have a comprehensive zoning ordinance in Houston anytime soon. I reject that. I don't think that you have to pay the price of losing the Fourth Ward for growth. I don't think that that's a necessary side effect of a rapidly growing city. I think there's much that perhaps could have been done over the years to prevent that in what's happening in the Fourth Ward. And because of so many years of neglect, there's less that we can do now than we could have done earlier. Or for that matter, less that we should be doing now than we should have been doing earlier, because the Fourth Ward is, as I've said before, basically a gone neighborhood. The housing stock of that neighborhood is more deteriorated than any similar situation, with maybe one or two exceptions, in the city of Houston. And now the question must be asked whether it's intelligent for us to go back into the Fourth Ward to try to redo it the way that the Fourth Ward was originally done. I don't think it is. But I don't think that what's happened in the Fourth...
It would be feasible.
I don't think it would be intelligent for us to do it. I don't think that redevelopment of the Fourth Ward, the way the Fourth Ward was originally conceived, is an intelligent thing to do.
Just looking at the city government of Houston as over the years, over the past, say, 20 years, it is a government that it appears to us to be have an ear towards the business interests rather than, say, an ear to sort of less formalized. I mean, somebody put it that business interests here have the glue to express themselves, whereas other interests in the city of Houston are too fragmented and don't articulate themselves in order to create pressure on you, say, as a mayor.
Well, I think that's generally true, the American culture at large. But I don't think that it's any worse here in Houston than it might be otherwise. The truth is the so-called business voice in this community is a very diverse voice. It is not singular. It's not uniform. And someone in my position does not answer to the business community because of its financial power. It answers to people because of their their voting power. And the interest that the mayor might have with respect to the business community is the interest that he might have with respect to votes in an election. And I think in recent years in this city that we have seen very sophisticated inner-city organization. I'm a mayor because the inner city voted for me, and they voted for me in a very organized and very determined way. In fact, in the last election, the one which I won last time, the inner city turned out in numbers that were probably 10% ahead of the outer city. So there's considerable interest on the part of the politicians in this community in neighborhoods just like this, because neighborhoods like this are very highly organized. They're very highly political and highly organized.
They got me doing manual labor.
They did what?
Have me doing manual labor there.
Oh, will you carry it?
No, I've got it. I'm joking. I lift weights now. Well. Hey.
First of all,
Tom had heard that the ministers had decided to focus their questions around two main topics. One was the federal money that was supposed to come to rehabilitate inner-city neighborhoods, called community development money, and the second was the issue of permits. Several ministers had applied for building permits and had been refused, they've said.
Not have a long say, and whatever anyone has to say concerning the Fourth Ward issue, the mayor's here, and I'm sure he can respond to whatever you say. It's all yours.
I think I would let someone else probably.
Reverend O.B. Brown, open up. Come on over this way, son. Take a seat right here.
Open up.
I definitely want you.
I talk so much I see it. I promise myself I will be quiet.
Well, Mayor, I believe that our main concern right now here, pastors, can we, or could you tell us whether we can make plans to really expand our church facilities here? We will be here another 10 years, 20 years, just what can we look for in the future in this Fourth Ward area?
Well, right now, Reverend, the city doesn't have any specific plans with respect to the Fourth Ward. There's a lot of talk that goes on, a lot of conversation. As you know, the neighborhood has gradually lost people. Most of your churches now attract people from areas that are much larger than the Fourth Ward, people who grew up in the Fourth Ward, but they're now living in the Fifth Ward, or they're now over in the Third Ward, coming back to church over here. There are only about 7,000 people that live in what we call the Fourth Ward now, and the housing condition in the Fourth Ward is such that this area was not designated by the Community Development Task Force as a major recipient of early community development funds, because those funds were designated in neighborhoods where there was a chance to rehabilitate single-family houses.
Is there any one thing that we as citizens can do that will make us qualify for immediate action on this loan?
On the community development funding?
Yes.
Well, those aren't necessarily all loans. I forget, and I should have before I came over here checked, at what point in time Fourth Ward gets funded. It's third year. Is it second or third year? Third year. So you're coming up very soon. You will be part of the next fiscal year development, and I don't think there's anything in the world that you can do that will hurry that up. You know, I don't want you to be real excited about that, because there's only $13 million a year under that program for the entire city. In the fourth year, we will jump up to $23 million a year, but for the third year funding, it's still only $13 million a year, and it's very unlikely that that $13 million a year spread over as many needy neighborhoods as there are in this city. And we're obligated to spend it in all of the target neighborhoods. We'll be able to do any good.
Well, what's the reason why that a church can't get a building permit for a new building in this locality?
Well, it would be the reason that I gave you earlier regarding the sewage treatment plant, which is currently under construction. And it should be completed by 1979 or maybe 1980. Beg your pardon?
Is Fourth Ward on the same line, the line downtown that they keep issuing permits to build skyscrapers?
Yes.
And they keep adding. They seem like they don't get much.
But I think
It seems to me they don't get much. I haven't much problem to getting permits to build these skyscrapers, which is adding very much more onto the same sewer line. And we can't get a church with a 3 bathroom. It's too much.
Are issued are they're about that thick, and they're all checked off on by the Texas Water Quality Board, which is the authority that regulates the city of Houston's operation of our sewage treatment plants. And they're very complicated rules. They're very difficult to understand, but there are rules, and they do apply to the whole city, and we've got to live with those rules.
One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about was a statement that you made in the interview that Channel 8 had with you in your office. And you talked about, I'm not quoting you verbatim, but in essence, you said that Fourth Ward, the vicinity of Fourth Ward is a dying community, and it has been dying for the last 20 years, and that it would be fruitless to put any monies in Fourth Ward. Now, made the statement, as close as we are, and I feel that we're close, it kind of went home with me, because to say that Fourth Ward is a dying community when there are, you stated, 7,000 people around here, and if you go to Gregory Elementary School, to go to Lincoln School, you'll see life. You know, it's dying, and my feelings is it's dying because it cannot receive any help from the city fathers.
Reverend Smith, you and I have discussed this before, and you shouldn't be surprised by that comment. Sure, there's 7,000 people that live in the Fourth Ward now, but a few years ago there were twice that. And every year we see a few more people leaving the Fourth Ward. It is a dying community. And now the question is whether or not the community is something that we should attempt to turn around, revive.
I feel it is.
The question about, you said that I had previously asserted that it would be fruitless to invest in the Fourth Ward. I'm sure that the thought behind that comment was that it is fruitless to do it in a piecemeal way, that if we're going to do anything, that the Fourth Ward has to be attacked in its totality. It is fruitless to come in and try to dab here and dab there and mess around here and mess around there. The problems of the Fourth Ward are very general problems, and it has to be attacked comprehensively.
Yeah. One of the reasons why that the population is dwindling is because of the inadequacy of the houses. Okay, they can do nothing about them because, first of all, they are low rental people, okay, on low income, less than average. So when the house falls down on them, it's condemned, the landlords will not do anything about them. What is it left to do but to move out? But here's the point that I want you to hold fast to, because I do, and that is, even though the families are leaving Fourth Ward, they're going out of Fourth Ward, and you made the point yourself, a statement rather, that they're coming back in here for worship, which is really saying that they don't want to leave Fourth Ward if it's anything can be done. This is the way I feel about it. So, you know, I feel that you can't do it all, but I do feel that you can do something that's very tangible that can help us to kind of save Fourth Ward, and this is what we need to do.
Mayor, is there any truth in that private enterprise or private industrial is trying to take over this part of Fourth Ward?
I would imagine that private industry is always looking at good real estate situations. I don't speak for the private industry, but I would imagine that there are those that look with some interest at the Fourth Ward because of its juxtaposition to the downtown business district.
May I say this in reply, and I guess this is climax. I heard him ask about the private industry. All I'm saying is that even though you're the mayor to private industry and all of this, you're the only source of help we have of keeping us from being snuffed out, crated up and packed out and put on some isolated place like they do Indians. You're the only hope. And if we come to you, you know, we need you in our corner as in the corner of all people. You said something about, we got to abide by the rules, but I do know that sometimes those rules have a flavor on them. If it's money speaking behind it, then the rules are kind of suspended. But if it's someone that doesn't have anything, then those rules are applied, strictly stipulated, spelled out, and held steadfast. And we can't get big business off our necks. We don't have no way of getting them off our necks.
Big business is the problem with the Fourth Ward.
That's trying to take Fourth Ward.
Mr. Mayor, I know you have to leave, but this coming Sunday there's going to be about 2,000 people with all these churches here. And what can we tell them to look forward for Fourth Ward area as far as the city is concerned? What can we tell them?
I think all that you could tell them at this point is that the community development funding for this section will begin with the third year, and that is proximate, that is to say it starts very soon, and that they should contact their community development representative to see to it that the needs of this area are communicated to the city administration.
But Mayor, 3 years from now it won't be nothing left. 3 years from now it won't be nothing left.
Thank you.
Proceed.
Okay, thank you. Goodbye, President. Bye.
Do you feel that your questions were answered?
No. Yes. Yes.
Not really.
Yes. I think he was fair with us. That's all. He was fair with us.
He's fair, but
We still don't know anything.
we don't know nothing.
Yes. Let me state this too. The question was asked of the mayor. Did he know of any private enterprise that was concerned about buying the Fourth Ward area? And I think that this was a point that he slowed down some. I believe that he knows.
We're going to have to get ourselves together in the Fourth Ward area, come together ministerially so, and come together residentially so, and then put one big package together and show a reaction on everything that has been said or done. This is my feeling. I feel that this wakes us up to the point that we need to be doing something now.
The truth is, the so-called business voice in this community is a very diverse voice. It is not singular. It's not
Macedonia Baptist, a week or so later, some of the ministers got together to look at more of our films. The shooting had gone on over 8 weeks now. We were running out of film, money, and time, and we needed an ending in the worst way. Reverend Smith, when he had heard the mayor, said, "This wakes us up," but a week later nothing had happened, and it looked like we'd have to bring on the fireworks and an elephant act in order to end the picture. Tom, the journalist, said he'd get me an ending, so he pulled together this meeting. Its purpose was to organize a protest at City Council the following Wednesday.
Something we've known for a while, big business wants this neighborhood for commercialization, and the only people who don't want that are a bunch of poor folks who've been pretty scattered and we haven't really been able to get it together and apply any political pressure, again, because we don't have zoning to protect us. Zoning would protect residences, citizens like this, from this kind of encroachment, from commercialization. But we don't have zoning in Houston because big business don't want it here for exactly this reason. They want to be able to go to grab where they want, in the direction that they want, wherever they think the land is most suitable to them. What I don't understand is why our city officials are willing to let them grab these people's land.
Why indeed had civic leaders allowed it to happen? We tried to figure out what we were up against. I ran a piece of film that nobody had seen yet.
There may be no community left to save. Who are the people who are still there? There are not many.
If Houston could guarantee the Fourth Ward something of a future, I'm sure these people would see it much more fruitful to stay. You feel?
Houston cannot guarantee the people of the Fourth Ward a future. To do so would perhaps be like standing at the base of Niagara Falls, holding up your little finger saying you're going to stop the water from falling. The city of Houston, I don't feel, has it within its power to stop the encroachment of downtown Houston into the Fourth Ward community. That is a growth pattern which has set in, and to try to retard it at this point would probably be useless and futile. So for the city of Houston to say, I will guarantee that you will remain here as an entity in perpetuity would be an argument without any basis, because they would not be able to do that, powerless to do that, as a matter of fact. So I don't know how we're going to prevent that moving out of commercial establishment downtown Houston into the Fourth Ward area. The Fourth Ward Civic Club was at one time one of the strongest black civic clubs we had, the Fourth Ward Civic Club and the Fifth Ward Civic Clubs. And they had strong leadership, and there was great identity among the people with each other. But I have seen that wane a little bit as we have moved through the years. And unless there is within that community a strong community base fighting City Hall to survive as long as they can survive, then I think that this erosion of the community will continue.
And you don't see a base at this time? No.
I do not see a base with the strength that I'm talking about at this time.
Jordan's interview was a real downer to those of us trying to plan a march on City Hall on the following Wednesday. How could a few well-intentioned people in a very small part of the city do anything without support from important people? Fourth Ward was left to its own devices.
Jordan's pessimism toward the plight of the Fourth Ward. We need public, I understand that she sees that the problem's going downhill, but from what I picked up from her statements, it's as though she's almost given up on the Fourth Ward.
You probably have to ask yourself the question of whether she's ever been in the Fourth Ward's corner.
It's people like Barbara Jordan that we very definitely need in our corner, if anything, because they have the voice. She's up there where she can speak for us.
Barbara was right, though, in that the political power of the Fourth Ward has degenerated somewhat, and it's not as tight as it used to be. I think the potential's still here, though.
This is just the way I feel about it. The thing that ties the hands of the massive movement running, is that most of Fourth Ward are tenants. These are persons that are living in the homes that are not owned by them. So if they move for something for the future, what will the landlord say about it? This is the thing that really is hanging in the air. I mean, the people of the church, the churchmen, the pastors and what have you, we have a strong voice. We can say what should be. But the tenants that are living in these houses, that the landlords can come in tomorrow and say, hey, get out. If we group together, if we push for something that's meaningful, and I hope I don't sound like I'm losing hope or anything, what will be the outcome?
What do you think of, what the mayor had to say, what Fred had to say in terms of the dying community, and it would be unwise, unintelligent to invest money in Fort Worth?
I was telling the Reverend that he may be right. It may be unintelligent for us to try to stay here in Fourth Ward. It may be not very smart for people in Fourth Ward to want to live here, but emotionally, people have roots here, and they're not thinking of a lot whether this is the cheapest thing to do to save the Fourth Ward. If the people of the Fourth Ward, vis-a-vis particularly through the church leadership, because they're about the only strong institution left in the Fourth Ward, don't demonstrate that they want to stay here and do everything that's necessary surrounding that to show that they're going to stay here and that they're going to apply the pressure regardless of what level that takes to do that, then no politician, not Ron Waters, not Barbara Jordan, no one is going to step forward out there all alone to help them and say, we're going to keep the Fourth Ward here.
What we have to look into now
is what are the alternatives and what are the possible ways of organizing some kind of movement to allow them to respond.
I think
it isn't there.
to me to say that that politicians respond is not true. Politicians, by their very nature, are supposed to be able to recognize situations. I mean, that's like saying
the people have to say they need it. They have to say it, and they have to say it politically.
Because they can say they have no format. They don't appear at board meetings where power is kind of bartered about. They sit there, they're totally out of the system. The only time that they have a chance to get in on what's going on is when they vote. So they vote for Hobb Fines and Jordan. These are the people they send to the board meetings which make the decisions
I'd
about
had it
what's
with
going to
discussions. There was no more time. Jordan and Waters had been telling us that it was up to the people to act. I agreed with that. If you don't act, you've nobody to blame but yourself. Ed and Tom were arguing that it was up to leaders to do something, but not to people. But I wasn't listening. I was plugged into a dream. I was remembering all those old John Wayne and Jimmy Stewart movies where ordinary people faced with incredible odds rallied together at the last minute and overcame the forces of corruption. It was a beautiful dream. Why couldn't it happen in the Fourth Ward?
Not to give them
Well, I still believe in that this is a democracy, and I believe if the people can get together, they can form an active political force. And
like Roy Hoffman, Fred Hoffman.
Not only that, but to put pressures on them, put pressure on City Hall. In fact, over and over again, city officials have told us that's what has to happen.
So I would wonder about the possibility of our doing some of the same things that we have done effectively before. We've taken busloads of people down to City Council, and you'd be surprised what that does to councilmen. You get 200 people...
We needed as many people down at City Council as we could get. We asked for support from the other black areas.
...and the little children and all the folks who were there, or you pull together 20 precinct judges and go down to visit the mayor. And those precinct judges, each one may represent 1,500, 2,000 voters each. And he knows this is a certain kind of mathematics that he understands. So what Floria has said is just absolutely correct. The only way for us to operate is going to be in terms of pressure. So far, the only time that the white power structure has ever moved is when we have pressure. They don't move because it's right for them to move. They don't move because we ask them nicely. They don't move because we bargain across tables like gentlemen. They move because they are under pressure. And it seems to me that we have to put them under pressure.
So you think we can have some kind of support then for next Wednesday?
Yeah, I don't see no problem with it at all. I sure think so. Tom is going to let me know something about Reverend Wade and about how to reach him. And obviously we can lay hands on numbers of people between now and next Wednesday.
Great.
And in the final analysis, if there is to be any kind of media coverage, it generally comes to the point of interest. Media will be at the city council meeting. If the place fills up with people, then obviously also the media realizes niggas are mad about something.
Yeah. If industry heard that there was trouble in Houston, that black people are unhappy because they're trying to phase them out of a particular section of town, then industry is going to say, wait a minute, hold it now. We thought we were going to a problem-free town. So let's hold up and let's look at it 6 more months. And then you got a building that's built for that unit by Schnitzer, Hines, and one of them folk. And now they sitting with a building and the folk ain't coming because they say the niggas are unhappy. Let's hold it. Let's see if we can get some of our folk to cool that thing off, you see. But the problem is now is that there's too much has been cooled off. So much so that the man says, don't worry about it, we got somebody who can take care of that. And then he doesn't realize that something different is going to happen because who he thought could take care of it ain't in a position to tell them people to hush, because them people say, we're going to save our neighborhood. And I think when they see a number of folk coming together to do one thing, then you got the solution there.
Do you want to be helped? And then are you willing, the question is, not whether I want to be helped, but are you willing to help yourself? Are you willing to...
Macedonia Baptist, the Sunday before we were supposed to go down to City Council. I imagined other sermons were going on all over the city at the same time. It sounded good. I had visions of blacks marching in from all sides of town, from Sunnyside, Acres Home, South Park, from 3rd Ward, 5th Ward, coming to save their birthplace, coming from all over Texas to save the 4th Ward and speak out at City Council.
Fourth Ward was not worth spending money on. Now it's up to you and I to make him out of a lie. It's up to you and I to make him out of a lie.
That's the way to be a
And
man.
if we just sit down and don't say nothing, then he will be what? Telling the truth.
Yeah, right.
He will be telling the truth. And he will be right in holding up his money. But if we show him we are worth saving, and we will be saved.
There you are.
City Council, Wednesday morning. This is where we carry out the things we say we believe in. Every Wednesday for about an hour, starting at 10 o'clock, citizens have a right to make their gripes known to 8 councilmen and a mayor who represent and make decisions for more than 1.5 million people.
It's about 9:05, and nobody's here except Reverend Washington came in. He asked me, where's Tom? Tom's not here yet. And he needed to talk things over with him.
It was another list. It was a speaker's list. I just got it, but I don't see Reverend Washington on it. Do you see?
No, I don't see my name nowhere on this list. I don't see how that is possible. This is the only list.
Yeah, that's one I just got. Yeah, I just got it from the city secretary. There's somebody down here that says Prophet Charlie Washington, but that wouldn't be you.
No, I'm not a prophet yet.
He wants to build a wall around
the city. Yeah, I wouldn't mind doing that.
I hate to admit it, but this was my first time ever at City Council. I didn't know how it worked. The speeches were to start at 10 o'clock, and Washington wasn't even on the speakers list.
Any indication of the Fourth Ward area?
9:45. We'd heard that buses were supposed to bring the people from the Fourth Ward, but so far no sign of them.
He's a salute. Well, can he speak if he's not on the list?
I'm going to sure try.
Well, maybe we ought to go in and see the city secretary. Why don't we go?
I'm here to represent the citizens in the Fourth Ward area to speak, and I don't see my name on the list because I see Representative Ron Waters are named here.
Representative Waters' office called in and made a reservation. You have to have a reservation prior to 9 o'clock.
Yeah, well, I thought that this had been done. The question is, may I have a minute to speak, even though I'm not?
No, sir, we're not allowed to make a reservation after 9 o'clock.
I was supposed to be on this speak today, but I don't see my name here. I see that Ron Waters is on. We can get you on. You can get me on? Mm-hmm. I sure would appreciate it.
10 o'clock. Councilman Judson Robinson offers to help get us back on the list.
Robert Lee Washington.
You'll be way down here, but we'll get you on.
That'll be good.
Okay.
Thanks. All right. We was in school together.
I am president of Citizens Against Pornography.
10:10. The anti-pornography people were there with plenty of support, but still no one from the Fourth Ward.
I assure you that if most of you were standing here in the nude today, none of us would be particularly disturbed because we might be able to appreciate the art of it. But if you begin copulating orally and anally with each other, putting it on film, putting it in the theaters and charging us admission to see it, then that is pornography. And that's what we're here talking about. We have the support of the churches, we have the support of the schools, and we have support of countless organizations. We will only need about 36,000 names on that commission, and I guarantee you we can get that in one day.
10:15. Ron Waters arrives. He missed his turn to speak, but says he'll slip a note to the mayor and get back on the list.
Or in a minute I'll slip a note up there and try to get him to get me on someplace. Yeah, we'll get back on it. Where you been?
Where have I been? At the hospital with my little girl all night long.
Well, nobody showed up.
No, it's all right. They're going to do it 3 weeks in a row anyway. That's all right.
There was something in the way Tom said that gave me the feeling I'd been looking forward to something that was never going to happen.
Morning, Mayor, City Councilman. I'm here this morning
10:30. A handful of people showed up. Waters in his speech seemed to be looking for an answer for why no one else was there.
The future of the Fourth Ward, and I think that the citizens of that neighborhood are also concerned, and if you would give them the opportunity in the forum of, say, a night session of City Council, you might even want to be creative and go to the Fourth Ward if you've never been there and hold it in the Fourth Ward. I think you would find an outpouring of emotion and a statement on the part of those people about their desire to live as a community in Fourth Ward.
I'm going to just ask him for a commitment.
Out in the hallway, Reverend Washington looked for something precise he could say to the council. He turned to Tom for help.
Within legal power for him to do.
Well, I think, the basic things that you were saying Saturday, I wouldn't ask him to do anything if I were you. I would demand that he, first of all, stop his plans for the widening of West Dallas and use that money, for work in the community. I would also demand that he initiates a review of the building permit procedure in Fourth Ward. Who's putting what effluent into the sewer system. And fourthly, just a commitment from him that Fourth Ward is worth saving because it's a community of people as opposed to, whatever in the hell he thinks it is. And that the only way that Fourth Ward is going to be able to survive is that commitment is there from him that it's worth saving. And the fact that people in Fourth Ward want to say, the fact that the massive numbers of people from Fourth Ward are not here today, does not mean that much. They'll be here in 2 more weeks.
Yeah.
That's good.
Good morning, Mayor, and thank you, Justin Robertson, for hearing my case. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Councilman, and I'd like to direct my remark especially to the Mayor, Justin Robertson, and to Louis Mason. I'm here on behalf of the Fourth Ward citizens. There are about several hundreds or to the 1,000 people that are waiting to march up here. I asked them not to come yet, but to give our mayor and the councilman a chance to work for us, for we have a lot of confidence in Mayor Hawthorne. After a meeting with you, Mayor Hawthorne, we found several things that can be done. We have found out that you're planning to widen West Dallas, and we are asking you to take the money that you're planning to widen West Dallas. I don't know the reason you're planning on doing that, but to use it in the Fourth Ward area to upgrade some of the homes in that area. We have ministers who are trying to build their churches. They have not been able to get permits. They're saying that the water sewage is not right. But we have found out that one Allen Landing is on that same sewage. And they were able to get permit after some of the Fourth Ward churches have tried. Mr. Mayor, I'm asking that you would reconsider the statement that you made that Fourth Ward was not worth saving, or that it's not an intelligent act to put money in the Fourth Ward area. Our people will be waiting Sunday to hear what you have to say. And I'm hoping I can go back and tell them that you would at least go back with your councilman and restudy the plan and give us a chance to help ourselves. We want to save Fourth Ward. Whatever it takes, we are willing to do. But we need help from you gentlemen, especially you, the mayor, and Mr. Mason. I talked with you about 2 years ago. You told me, Reverend, if you need me, call me. I'm calling on you now. We sure need you. We want to save Fourth Ward. It's one of the oldest areas in the city. It can be done, but we need you gentlemen to help us to do that. May I go back and tell them that you will review the action? Can we get a commitment from you?
Go back and tell them, Reverend Washington, that the city is extremely interested in helping the Fourth Ward any way we can.
In any way you can. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Well, I had my ending, but I didn't know what to do with it. It looked like things had fizzled. We had a speech, but council chambers were not filled with people. The next week and the week after, a few ministers spoke, but there were never any busloads of people. The local media did cover it, including one show of 30 minutes. But there were no reports of people rising up to fight City Hall. Mostly they said that it was all over.
We're sort of including the process of this whole thing.
Don Shelby of Channel 2 did a week-long series on the Fourth Ward. And this is the way he saw it.
What is this movement then, the people that are starting to get together? How does that look to you then? How do you see that?
I really haven't seen a movement. I see a conflict.
There are certain people that come down here and said we're going to keep the Fourth Ward. I was just wondering how that looked to you.
Honestly, I don't see how they can say that. They can say it. I don't know how in the world they can do it. 3 against 1 or 2 against 1. It just doesn't work out. And I believe that there are plans sooner or later, 8 years, 10 years away, to do something with that area for the business community.
Have you got some evidence of those plans? Because we've never really found any hard evidence for that.
On the contrary, the plans aren't there. But you see, that is what I am finding. There are no plans. There are no plans for the people. There are no plans for business. So
there are plans for the area that in 8 years to do something else with it.
The plans that exist are the plans which are the grand plans that lie in the minds of the absentee landowners there. Regardless of what utilization that land will be put to, it is for some day in the future to be something other than what it is, and that is an area that cannot be pulled up from its bootstraps, as it were.
What do you see happening right now? Now that we don't have any participation. I mean, we got zilch at City Hall this morning. The person who was supposed to speak wasn't there. I mean, the 2,000 people cramming busloads and marching on City Hall hasn't happened.
The myth.
Well, like I said, we call a spade a spade. I don't mind drawing a conclusion about black people at all. I've drawn a lot of them before. You simply tell the story like it is.
Which would be what?
If they have failed to take action to prevent something from happening to them, something that affects their quality of life, then, I think that's what we have to say.
They have nobody to blame.
That they have nobody to blame but themselves.
Well, that's the way it ended over a year ago. We blamed the people for not acting. But seeing it again, there's something about that really bothers me. It doesn't sit right. I had to face up to the fact that we had created that ending just as much as if we'd written the script. It started way back when we picked the Fourth Ward as a subject. Sitting next to those big modern buildings, Fourth Ward was the underdog. Perfect story for a filmmaker. All the people had to do was march on City Hall and demand fair play. We had set the stage for a big movie ending, even given them their lines. And then we sat back and watched them perform. And when they didn't fit the script, we bowed out and said it was their fault. But in a funny way, all we were asking them to do is what society asked them to do when they got a problem. Put on a good show down at City Council, to be John Wayne and put up a fight. If you don't fight, well, then there's nothing to be done. But what happens if the people don't or can't fight? Is a problem any less a problem? We'd set out looking for forces that shaped this city. What we'd found were 3 ways of thinking about things. All of them led to a stalemate as far as the Fourth Ward was concerned. There was the notion of conspiracy, which was held by many of the people in the Fourth Ward. Discouraged them from thinking that anything they did would do any good. And then there was downtown's notion of natural economic forces. This wanted the city's economic situation to be just allowed to run its own course without interference. Then there was the notion that we'd believed in, that people could change things by grassroots movements alone. Well, when it came right down to it, all that meant was that if nobody complains, then there's no reason for anybody else to worry about changing anything.
Now, you put all three of those notions together, and you got a beautiful situation that leads straight to nowhere.
While everybody sits around explaining why nothing can be done, the Fourth Ward just sits there getting worse. What remains is the problem. For downtown, for politicians, for the people of the Fourth Ward themselves. It stands there begging for a solution.